Everyone had a good weekend. Not long enough, but back at it. Our first item, we want to go ahead and nominate a chairperson. So do we have any nominations? I hear nothing. Do we have anybody volunteer? Okay. I'm being told if you hold down the space bar on your computer, you can talk. That'll unmute you temporarily, and then you can go back to being muted, so you don't feel like you have to watch everything you say. Jimmy, you'll volunteer? Okay. Do we have anyone else make a nomination?
This is Commissioner Starkey. I would nominate Kelly Miller.
Okay.
I gotta go find my phone. I'll be back.
Any other nominations? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll wait on Commissioner Starkey real quick. So I have Jimmy and Kelly for the chair.
One at a time. Do they want to make a deal?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Kelly, are you interested in doing the chair?
I mean, also the chair, if the commissioner wants me to. I think that the chair is an extremely important role for this organization because we're going to stand in front of the commission.
Right.
So, I will obviously accept the nomination for the commissioner.
Okay. And Jimmy, are you willing to do the vice chair? If not, okay. All right, we'll go ahead. All those in favor for Kelly for chair, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, and Jimmy has volunteered to do vice chair. Will anybody else like to do that or make any other nominations? All right, hearing none. All those in favor for Jimmy?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we have a chair, Kelly, and Jimmy will vice chair. And Kelly, do you have the agenda? Did we? Okay. We were going to present real quick a PowerPoint, and John will put that up on the screen for.
Is the sound gone?
I could hear you, Commissioner Starkey, Jeff, but I can't hear anything.
I haven't been able to hear anything. I just heard someone say I can't hear, or you're muted, Starkey, or something.
Yeah, I don't hear anything.
Try to chat. Just sent a couple chats to everybody. It's like they might be back in.
We see you.
For whatever reason, the room just would not unmute, so you're good.
Okay, so everybody should be able to hear now, and if we can just ask you please to give us a thumbs up rather than unmuting yourself if you can hear me. Okay, great, excellent. And keep your volumes on mute. We were just informed that if you use the space bar, you can unmute temporarily if you need to speak. And we'll just watch for some hand gestures as well. So we love to talk with, and keep it clean, please. We'll pick back up with one.
So this is the purpose of the AHAC, and it is due on in May of 2021, and it will accompany our new local housing assistance plan, which delineates how we will be spending the money that comes from the State Housing Initiative Partnership. So these are the strategies that there are, I believe, 12 or 13 strategies that we have to look at. And I thought we would look at 6 of them today and discuss them and look at other action items for staff to review and then come back, and then we'll look at the others and plan it from there. But the first strategy is expedited permitting, and that strategy is in place to take a permitting system that might take 21 days or more for single-family homes and bring it down to 10. And single-family homes that qualify receive a letter from our department, and then it goes to permitting, and it elevates or expedites the permitting process. When this I'm trying to think of the right word, recommendation incentive plan, there we go. When this incentive plan came through in 2018, one of the recommendations was to look on how we could automate the process with Excella. I am not familiar because nobody in my office uses it, so I'm not sure that we connected with that system at all. I also feel as if there might be a disconnect between multifamily projects that don't necessarily come through our office, because projects that would come through our office would be getting funding from us, CDBG funding, home funding, or SHIP funding. But there are other affordable housing projects out there that don't necessarily get funded, and I'm not sure how they're getting expedited. And I know we have a couple of developers that are on right now, and I'd be happy to hear. I think it would be helpful to hear how this process is or is not working for them, because I think that if we look into it further, we can perhaps make some other recommendations and shore up the process.
I think maybe referring to you, Jeff, to maybe make a comment, if you would, on how that process is working for you.
There would be Jeff, and Mark Wickham should be on here as well, and anybody from Habitat.
Okay. I want to go first.
Yeah, this is Jeff. I'll be brief. I've not had the opportunity yet to use this system, so I unfortunately cannot give you any feedback. But hopefully, Mark.
Is Mark on? Mark Wickham?
Yes.
So Mark, did you have the opportunity to have expedited permitting for Spear Village?
We did, and it was a relatively good experience. I think we needed to contact you once during that process, Marcy, but I think overall the process went pretty well.
Okay, thank you. Sean, do you have any input for Habitat?
So Mark, and I do have a comment. We use Accessory in our community. Okay? We've been tapped in. We use it for code enforcement, and we also use it for building code violations. I can give you the names of the people that are a great support system for us here in the county staff, which would be Lisa Stinnett, and they call him JR, and I believe his officer, TOMRO, but I can get you both of their contact information, and they are whizzes at Accessory. And once you get into the program, being able to just check up on it is extremely easy. They also do some classes, so maybe we may even want to consider having them do a free class to any of the developers who may want to get a quick lesson in Accessory so that they can make that process easier for them. or send one of their staff members from the office.
Okay.
Once you get in, it's pretty easy to use.
So I just want to go back to Mark. Mark, did you, I think you got started before under my predecessor. So did community development issue you a letter, or how did you get into the expedited permitting queue? Do you know? Mark, we can't hear you if you answered.
Okay. Well, we did it with the POP program, Marcy. There was a pink paper that they put right on top of all of our stuff when we send it over to the.
Yeah, I understand how we do it when it comes through our office, but again, not all these developments come through our office. That's what I'm wondering, that's a disconnect. I just want to get that.
Yeah, I'm back.
Mark, did you hear? Are you back?
I am back. I don't know why I'm having some computer problems, but I'm back.
Okay, so my question to you is, do you know how you got into the expedited permitting process? Did you get a form from community development, or how did it work?
No, if I recall, Marcy, there was no form that we filled out in terms of expediting it. It was done through community development. We talked with people at community development, and I think there was a flagging system at that particular point, Marcy. I don't know how they did it internally. So that's what I recall.
Okay, that would probably match what you just said, Kelly, is the pink sheet of paper is a flag.
Yeah, I think there was.
Yeah, we do a letter now, but again, we'll look at it on our end, because we want to make sure that whatever tools that are available in our toolbox to expedite or assist affordable housing, we want to make sure that all of that is working properly. So we will investigate that. So the next item that we would be looking at is reducing or waiving impact fees. And there was a workshop in February of 2020 that community development joined with planning on, and it was to present the idea of decreased or waived mobility fees to the Board of County Commissioners. And the Board of County Commissioners gave direction to staff to proceed with waiving mobility fees for affordable housing. And I believe that it's still in process with the different ordinance readings and changes, but I haven't gotten an update yet. But I believe that it will come through as all mobility fees for projects that are single-family homes and a multifamily will not have mobility fees attached to it. Now, there are lots of other fees that come along, so this is just a portion of it. But I also just want to open that up to discussion. Does anybody else have any input or updates on that? I don't even know if Commissioner Starkey, if you remember the last time you heard a hearing on that, a reading on the reduced or waived mobility fees.
Yes, we gave staff direction, as we tweaked the mobility fees on 54 and 56. It opened up a little bit of money that could be directed somewhere else. So has anyone taken advantage of that yet?
I don't think it's completely been implemented. So we will follow up on that. I've been working with Terry to get a liaison from planning to be here as well, so they could update us.
Okay.
And we when you do that too, I remember that there was, and we discussed this in the last meeting too,
the other fees for the school impact fees, and that some of those have been waived west of like Rowan Road all the way up in West Pasco. So there may be even more benefit to putting something, you know, in Southwest Pasco if there's still places to build, because that's the perfect market for it. But then there's also a lot of that transit-oriented development stuff. So there could be places and pockets where we could build something with fees minimal.
Kelly, a perfect place would be where Amskills was looking on Miles Stretch, that old club there that's for sale.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Who owns that now? Do you know? Is that the church?
No, some a guy, I think he lives in Tarpon, and they're amenable to sell, by the way.
Say, how perfect is that?
So my question is, how can the county regulate school impact fees? I thought we didn't have any. I thought, so our advice for developers has always been to go to the school board to see if they want to waive the fees. So I don't know that we have control over those fees. And I think that's why, I'm sorry?
We have no control over the school impact fees.
Correct. Okay. So it's, so we have the mobility fees, and I don't even think, I know that in our office, we've tried to get stormwater and other utility fees waived for our projects, and we haven't been able to get those waived either. So I think that it's minimal what we can have built with no additional fees on it. That's my understanding. So our goal for our next meeting will be to update this group on the status of the reduced mobility fees or waived.
And I bet Terry could probably put a heat map together for us too, you know, that would just show the areas that allowed, you know, you and Pasco, you know, with the reduced fees, so that we can even start looking in those areas of where you could build something.
Yeah, so it's the reduced fees will be attached to the product and not the location. So if it's considered affordable housing, then the fees are reduced. I don't think it's for any specific area. I think it's going to be countywide.
Okay, so let me just be like a little bit of a devil's advocate here for a second. And Commissioner Starkey, maybe you can help me understand this, because at the meeting last week, when we were talking about, where you guys were all talking about that affordable housing possible project out in Wesley Chapel, where they wanted to do some of the rezoning and all that, okay? I mean, is that some place that we could even look to put these types of projects? Or, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Kelly?
I'm directing this mostly to you.
Kelly, that
Commissioner?
That was not an affordable housing project, by the way.
It wasn't?
That was not a workforce housing, no. That was just straight rezoning.
It was market rate.
Just strictly apartments.
Yeah, actually luxury apartments.
What a shame, even worse then.
As far as I'm concerned, workforce housing should be everywhere.
Agreed.
We should put pockets of it everywhere. And I wonder if we've done an analysis of where we have it in the county and, you know, the bubbles around it. You know, are we serving all the communities? I'd love to see a map of where we have housing projects.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying too. And listening to that meeting, I had no idea they were luxury apartments, you know, I mean, because part of it is like this, you know, you can live in a big, luxurious, you know, gated community, but you know, where's your nanny live? Where does your housekeeper live? Where's the person who bags your groceries gonna live? You know, we can't allow ourselves to be that blocked off. So I agree with the commissioner. I would love to see a map and start to work with the developers on being able to put some of those projects where they're really needed.
I think the word I used in the meeting was elitist.
That was the exact word, but I was Yeah.
That word's being used a lot lately. We can look at how we don't have the capabilities in our office, but we certainly have a list of all the affordable housing units that money has been put into over the years, that whether it's low income tax credits or whatever. So we have a list of all those units, and we can see who we would work with on GIC to map it and see where the things. I know we have some things that we could also get from the Schimberg Institute as to where the properties are that are affordable.
I'll tell you, Terry did a fantastic presentation at the last meeting as well, though, talking about exactly how many units were available for rent. I mean, he had some fantastic statistics. I was writing like crazy because of, the Homeless Coalition, but he really had some spot on stats. His team's doing a great job, so.
Yeah. So, go on, Commissioner.
No, I had a question, but I forgot it. It was a good one too. I'll try to remember it.
Okay, so the next topic for us to look at, and this was not, so the first two that we talked about, the expedited permitting, that is in process, and we are just going to make sure that the process is working properly in the county. And the second one for decreased or waived mobility fees is in process. So the next one is flexible densities or density by right. And this is a tool in the toolbox that is very common in communities around the country to incentivize affordable housing. And we don't have something like that, at least as far as I'm aware of. And it wasn't recommended also in the last report. But some jurisdictions allow developers who are building affordable housing to get density either by right or once they apply to incentivize building affordable housing. So for example, let's say they're building on a property and the normal density might be 5 units per acre or whatever. And then they say they're going to build affordable units. And so some communities will say, well, if you're building affordable units, then you could build 7 or 8 units an acre or more. And it is a very common tool. And it, especially when you do it density by right, it allows a sense of surety or certainty to the developer. So they know that if they're going to go in and put up X number of units of affordable housing, that it already says in our ordinances or regulations that they could have a certain right of more density. And so I would be interested, again, to hear people's perspective on that both ways, because I know that when you get into density, sometimes you step on a lot of toes. People don't like that. So that would be a very specific area to discuss as to whether or not we'd like to make any recommended changes for density.
Well, I think some of that's already coming in front of the commission at this point and in front of the planning commission. So Commissioner Starkey, I'd be curious to see what your take would be on doing something like a density bonus. Do you think the commission would go for that?
I'm for that, but I think where the commission starts getting a little nervous is how big a project is. And for me, I'd rather see, I'd like to see projects sprinkled all over instead of large ones in just a few places. But I think having a density bonus is certainly a carrot. And also it decreases the cost because there's certain carry costs that when you divide it up under more units, it makes it more affordable. So it makes sense to have a density bonus. I would just caution us to not build places that are too big, because I think we'll get some resistance from some of the commissioners.
Mm-hmm. And do any of the developers think that getting or receiving a density bonus would be something you would be more interested in and want to, build more here if you had that incentive?
Hey, this is Jeff. I can just talk from a practical, from a family affordable housing development perspective, not from the single family. From the bonuses.
Okay. Jeff, you have to keep your hand on the space bar when you talk, I believe. Go on. Let's try it now.
Can you hear me better?
Yes.
So just from a multifamily affordable housing developer's perspective, density bonuses and flexible densities, they are available in a lot of jurisdictions and in a lot of municipalities. And what that does is it creates opportunities to develop areas. And so one of the problems we come across, is that most of our funding sources, the zoning that we require for the funding that we're going after, their density, the zoning has to be appropriate when we go in for our funding. And this funding process is a very long process. It takes a long, long time to get these things and then get through planning and blah, blah, blah. So what flexible densities do in density bonuses, things like that, is it gives developers opportunities to develop in more areas within any given jurisdiction. So from a practical matter, if we're wanting more development in all the different jurisdictions, we're talking about Pasco County right now, of course, and the more flexible densities and opportunities that are available, the more development you're going to get. To the commissioner's point about size, or to her statement about size, most of the time, again, on the multifamily side, a lot of the times on multifamily housing development side, the density is pretty much dictated by the bucket of money that we're going after. So we can't, say I'm going to build 25 units. There could be a piece of land density for 25 units, and it just won't work for a bucket of funding that we're going after because we need, let's say, 80 units. And by the way, that in Pasco County, I would say the range of practical units and most of buckets of funding of multifamily affordable housing goes after is probably 70 to 100, somewhere in that range, which is substantially smaller than a market rate deal, which is, 280, let's say, to 400 units, give or take. To make the numbers work on a market rate deal, there needs to be a lot more units, a lot more land, etc. Multifamily affordable, we're under 100 units typically in a county like Pasco. So that's some feedback for you. I'd be happy to answer any further questions, but that's some general perspective.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else want to comment on density bonus?
I'm wondering if Mark wants to say anything.
Mark, did you want to come in and say anything on your end?
No, I agree with what Jeff just said. I don't really have anything else to add to the density issue.
Okay. Marcy?
And so this also was something that did not need additional work or recommendations, but the program or the state asked us to review our infrastructure capacity and make sure that there is adequate infrastructure in place before proceeding with affordable housing development. And infrastructure includes public facilities, public services, and then the site being proximate to employment opportunities, schools, recreation, emergency medical facilities, and public transportation routes. And again, there was no action taken because this is included in our housing in our housing element, in our housing plan, the comprehensive plan. So I wanted to see if there was any further discussion on that. I do know that when we look at projects for tax credits that we vote on and the commission votes on to go to the state for competition, these are all threshold. They have to meet all these thresholds before we even send them through.
Does anybody have a comment on the infrastructure capacity? Okay.
One question, I mean, because what is proximate? Is that near or right on it or near to it? And you know, like, what do they consider near? That is proximate.
Are there rules for how far it should be from a school or employment opportunity, or are we just using some guidelines?
I think there's guidelines, but I also think that especially when it comes to public transportation and schools, you know, you have some of the walking distance or a reasonable drive. I know that when we were with the project that the commissioners put forward this past year up in Hudson, and the idea of it was walkable to emergencies. So the hospital was right there. There were schools right there and different. And I think it also depends on the project. So if you have senior project, you know, you want to make sure that it's near the emergency medical facilities or other medical facilities and possible public transportation routes. So I think, and then if it's a family project, then you want to make sure that the schools are nearby. Do you have some experience with that?
Well, yeah, with the Hot 202s, we do get scored, but there's a lot of scorings. It's
right.
Not just hospitals, it's shopping. It's if you can't get the shopping, could you provide a bus for shopping? A lot of areas that our consultant works with to score us.
Right.
A school district uses 2 miles, so maybe we use the just, that's a thought. School district uses 2 miles.
And this is something we can work with the planning department, right? Once a site is acquired or even being looked at, then the planning department can easily give us all this information for how far the distance is and all that, if it would fall into it.
Correct.
Okay.
This is Jeff. I'll just add real quick. I can't speak again to single family, but when it comes to multi-family source that I'm aware of, it has requirements in it to get the funding, and they're very appropriate requirements that require services to be close to this housing that they're going to put in.
Okay, so from what I'm gathering, Jeff was saying that he's got some strict rules on his end for multifamily. Yep, okay. Marcy, I'm just wondering, you know, is this approach going from the developer builder point, like come to Pasco County and build and we'll find you some space? Or are you looking to actually say, hey, we've got 14 lots that you can build affordable housing on because they're close to schools, close to emergency, close, and doing a sales pitch that direction?
No, so we're the government, and there are things within our span of control that we can do or offer to incentivize a developer coming in. So these are just our policies and procedures that we can or cannot put into place so that when a developer, nonprofit or for-profit developer comes and wants to build, like you saw, that wasn't affordable, but it doesn't matter. They come in, whether it's affordable or not, they come in and they say, well, we want to buy this land or we want this project. It might need to be rezoned. And so they have to go through a threshold of different things. And it's one thing when it's market rate because they'll make their numbers work with, like Jeff just said, with numbers and with the higher rents that they charge or a higher purchase price. But when it comes to affordable, the whole purpose is to make it affordable for people that are earning 80% or less, if not lower, of the median income. And so these kinds of initiatives will help them keep their costs down. And also, this is infrastructure is really important, especially when it comes to public facilities and stormwater and roads and things like that, because all of that could really add to the cost of the project. And you don't want to, and you want to be careful about that.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment so far on anything with infrastructure capacity or any questions else for Marcy? Okay.
Okay, so I know that Commissioner Starkey will have comments here. So this is, again, another tool in a toolbox, and that would be to explore new alternatives to create affordable housing opportunities, such as accessory dwelling units in residential zoning districts and within mixed-use projects. And I know we made this recommendation before. I understand that it might be part of an amendment and rewrite schedule, and we could go back and find out the status. But this is, again, a very typical tool in the toolbox is, right now we look at single-family affordable homes, especially in the habitat structure of housing, and then multifamily rentals that several of our developers are going vertical with. But there are other types of units that could be considered affordable, like an accessory dwelling unit. And that could be considered a mother-in-law suite. It could be considered a unit over a garage. It could be considered almost a mobile unit. I've seen a lot of them as like a little mobile, I don't want to call it a trailer, but like a mobile unit that can be attached to housing. And that has specifically been rolled out, especially for mother-in-law or elderly people who have come to stay with family. So, but they have to be zoned and they have to be allowed within the area that you live in. So I think that a lot of communities have done very well with ADUs, adding them to as affordable housing. These aren't, again, something that you add in to on the market rate side, but the idea that it could be available for example, a one person to rent out something in somebody's upstairs, a part of their garage for $500 a month, that would be affordable. So, Commissioner, I know you talk about Longleaf, right? Is that where?
Yes.
Some of them.
We built ADUs in Longleaf. We had to really fight the county to get them because it was the first time someone had tried. I think back in the day, a long time ago, it was much more normal. Yeah, we added what we call granny flats, apartments over the garage, and to anyone who wanted to build one in there. And it really allows the person to qualify for more housing. And also for snowbirds or people who travel, it keeps an eye on the property, makes it affordable for someone who wants to live in that kind of neighborhood but doesn't need a big house. My brother-in-law, Frank, had one over his garage. He sold that house now, but most of his tenants would be, sadly, people who get divorced and want to stay in the same community so they can be with kids. So I got a lot of divorced dads renting it, and so staying in the community. But I'm a big believer, and I have talked to Terry about them. And I agree with them at the meeting, so they can tell us where they are on the suggestions about. I can see where in some neighborhoods it may not fit, especially in an already established neighborhood, in a regular kind of subdivision. But if you allow them before when they start, they can be added. You don't even notice. And I know Lennar tried to do a neighborhood with ADU on the other side of the county, and they were charging double impact fee, so they have it. But this is a great way to add affordable seamless transit community.
So I wonder, you just brought up the idea of impact fees. So the house itself wouldn't be affordable because it's going to, but the question is, if they add an ADU, could that be considered something that extra part be waived, the mobility fee be waived on the additional unit?
Yeah,
that would be an interesting thing to look at.
They came up with a plan, and I cannot remember what it is right now. You don't want double school impact fees, but I think that in Longleaf they didn't charge an additional school impact fee. And I think Terry, we really should have him maybe at the next meeting, and he can talk about it. I think they did come up with a solution. I had a meeting with Dan Biles and Terry and Mark Matheny from Lennar about ADUs, and there were some good suggestions.
We can also look at, and maybe this is a possibility, maybe not, but like down on US 19, right there on Darlington and 19, right there's that little strip mall that's being built. It's only going to have about 4 retail stores, but wouldn't it be neat to have maybe 5 or 6 apartments above that, sort of a live, work right there kind of a thing? I mean, I really like to see our developers who are even doing something so small like that, throw a couple 1-bedroom, 1-baths upstairs. I mean, yeah, there'll be stairs and you'd be limited to, without an elevator for those in a wheelchair, but still some apartments that are affordable. And maybe they could even get a discount on building fees because they had residential inside that. That's what I'm leaning towards, that whole Walmart property on the corner of 54 and Grand Boulevard. If you did residential, you did these ADUs, and then you did shopping with, different types of apartments above it. I mean, you could have all kinds of families living there in one place. And you're in Southwest Pasco, where it really would benefit the demographic completely.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work being done in revising the code for mixed use development, and that is the gold star way of developing. My understanding, because I've talked to a lot of developers about this, and they say that it's just more expensive, and I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that, to do commercial with residential on top, that it adds to some considerably the cost of it. Does anybody have any comments on that? I live in downtown. I live close to downtown Newport Richey, and there are several variable buildings that have, apartments above it. And I grew up in New Jersey where that was standard, that, you had your first floor of commercial, your corners, candy stores and things like that. And then apartments above it.
We did that in Longleaf. Our downtown Longleaf is a retail commercial below or office and 3 floors of apartments above. If you get too high, you got to get into an elevator and that adds cost. You also have to think of parking, but certainly 1 floor above with stairs. Maybe we could start seeing some more of that if we incentivized it. I'm guessing that some of the builders that are on this panel don't build like that. They build the bigger ones, but I'd be curious to hear what they have to say.
Hey, this is Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, I think when we're talking about one of these uses, we're listening to almost any development group across the country about the missing middle. It's that single family and big multifamily. Accessory dwelling units are one of those types of properties. And over just a quick thought process, over the course of hundreds of years of development in major cities like New York City and Chicago and Boston, these types of developments of accessory dwelling units, they were just part of the everyday development at one point in time. And then we moved away from it because at that point, they were efficient and maybe a lot of generational people were living together and they were, et cetera, whatever. But, let's say that was 80 years ago or 60 years ago. Now we're doing big 400 unit multi-family deals and we're doing big 800, 2,000 unit single family developments and things are different. That's because of where the money is, that's where the equity is, that's where the financing is. So that's where that is now. So when it comes to accessory dwelling units, what we're saying is, hey, there was this type of unit that was used before that had been used within the development timeline of our country, a lot of places, and they make sense again. And so, I'm in multifamily, so this really doesn't apply to me, but from a practical standpoint, it seems to me like downtown Newport Richey, they're creating these breweries and these restaurants and these little town with the lake and the park and, having accessory dwelling units, allowing people to build a separated garage with a unit on top to rent out to somebody that may work down in the downtown court. That's a great area. It seems reasonable to me where ADUs would be really awesome and be very helpful with something like that. It's hard. I think it'd be hard to create them in these new types of developments. Again, they're not my expertise, but I think in areas that are already developed, and Pasco has a lot of those areas that are very densely developed, but aren't these big, huge single-family developments with CDEs and with HOAs and all that stuff. I think in those types of areas, allowing people, if they want to tear down an old building, an old house and build a new house that has an ADU somehow incorporated into it, that seems reasonable. Another quick idea, like Habitat for Humanity. I've talked with them about this before. We brainstormed about this, but think about this in Habitat. If you, in a Habitat house, if you give them the ability to build an ADU with a Habitat house, now not only are you giving somebody that needs a hand up, and you're giving them the ability to have a house, but also you're giving them the ability to have an income.
Rental income.
Yeah, and so and you're teaching them how to run a business, and they're getting experience being a landowner and having that extra income to help supplement their costs. So, I think ADUs are an amazing idea, and I think they can be used in quite a few ways to help the situation we're discussing.
Jeff, that was an excellent point. Thank you very much for your comment. I like that idea with Habitat for Humanity. I could see that going in a really positive direction with the right candidate for sure. Does anybody else have something to add, Jimmy?
Well, single-family ADUs are used in Long Island, New York. They're run by the township, which is our county, say. They charge a yearly fee, registration fees, which are pretty high per bedroom. Wow. And when you apply for it, they come out and inspect the property. But you could only do it if it's an owner-occupied property and the square feet is smaller than what you're renting out. Other than that, not much, you don't need to do much more. It's a good idea.
Jessica, how do you think they go in the market?
I was thinking that perhaps a number of property owners in our area might be receptive to the idea, but they may have not thought of it as an idea. And they may be intimidated by what steps do I need to take in the process. So perhaps some way of sharing the information with the community and educating them on how to go about it may actually lighten up that, bulb, and actually they might actually consider the idea.
Yeah, so I like Jeff kind of doing the kind of perspective of what used to be, and I think we talked a little bit about it when we say where we grew up or what, and so many things cycle, and you start off with housing in more like cities, and so they're used to, again, commercial and then residential up top, and then there's the flight to the suburbs, and then certainly down in Florida we've gotten into the gated communities and what that's like, and but then things are cycling back, some of it out of very much financial economic necessity of looking at other ways that we could provide housing. And so, of course, we're talking about regulations that would impact the county, and we would not have any authority in the city of Newport Richey or some of the incorporated cities, but certainly so much of the county is unincorporated that policy like this might work well in many parts of the county. And I agree. I agree both with what Jeff said and with Commissioner Starkey. It would be interesting to look at it for a new development like they did for Longleaf, but I also see it more as a retrofit for existing communities and housing outside of city limits. I think it would be really helpful.
I agree. I think you're kind of going down a slightly slippery slope. And the only reason why I say that is, for example, Colonial Hills, we'll just use, I had looked into at one point putting a second story on my home, and the houses, the foundations, they're not set to take that extra weight. So if we are going to be going above garages and things like that, the permitting processes really has to be spot on, because these houses now are starting to reach that historic 50-year mark, where we're just over the 50 years, especially in Southwest Pasco, where they're just not going to take the weight.
Kelly?
Yes.
One of the, there's a county called El Paso, Texas, which is actually where the airport will have to be. Colorado Springs. They started who wanted to add tiny homes to their property for residents, and frankly, about elderly people.
We're starting to lose you a little bit, Commissioner, for some reason.
El Paso, Texas passed a tiny house or ADU ordinance that allows people to drop in a tiny home in the property. And I don't remember what the restrictions were, but we might want to take a look at their ordinance and see how that's happened. And I can add it. But 2 years ago, they did to allow ADU to be added. They added before to add
Yeah, we definitely want to check into the restrictions for sure because, you know, they're building lots and stuff like that. But I would really be interested to see how they got, you know, do you need to have extra parking for that house? You know, that type of thing. That would be great. You say that's El Paso? Was the county?
El Paso, Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there, so we, while I was in Vermont, we also looked at this and we, and doing a lot of research on tiny homes because, it's almost without, I'm losing the word, but almost every time you talk about homelessness, somebody goes into approaching homelessness with tiny homes. And so I've spent a lot of rabbit trails looking at tiny homes for homelessness. And there was an architecture school in Vermont that actually designed this ADU. And it was primarily for either, they marketed it for either elderly or people that were coming home from the hospital that needed extra care, but the house wasn't set up for it. So it had ramped, it had an accessible bathroom, and it was just a small thing that literally pulled right up to your house. And some of them were installing either sliders. It would work out great here in Florida. You know, you don't see a lot of sliders up in Vermont, but sliders so that, you know, you could come in and out of this accessory dwelling unit there. For tiny homes and homeless, which we won't go down, but really the only way that works is if you're looking at building. We're not talking about the level of building that we're talking about here. You know, a lot of people build it with spare materials, so it only costs $10,000 or $15,000, and they almost never have bathrooms. They use the bathrooms in the kitchen that are corporate or community wide, and it's really just a place to live. I saw a really interesting article about like a Conestoga. Is it a Conestoga wagon that people, am I saying it right? Conestoga, am I saying it right? People are looking at me when people went across the country. Yeah, they were like hoop skirts, a half a hoop, and then they covered over them. And that's the latest trend in building those for homeless.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was really, I have it. I'll send it to you. It was really quite interesting.
I heard yurts.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
But that's new. Okay. Because you can roll that.
Yeah.
Perfect is that. Fill it with yurts. Just go, okay. All right.
So you brought up, and this will be the last one that we bring up for discussion today. You brought up the idea of, so if you do an accessory dwelling unit, do you need extra parking? And this is a big issue, or these alternative development standards, parking and setback standards for affordable housing, and the need to review the land development code and building regulations. So, for example, I keep picking on Mark because I know that you're there, but Mark put up last year, Spear Village, 6 affordable units that were for special needs for adults with developmental disabilities. I've done projects that, I've also, we have a project going on, and there's 1, 2, and 3 Ozanam Village. And so you work with populations that most likely will not have a vehicle, or not the same kind of vehicles or vehicular needs that perhaps a standard development has, yet they're held to the same standards. And I think that can sometimes have a significant impact on people that are building affordable housing. So does anybody want to speak to that? And specifically picking again on you, Mark, and I know you're getting ready to do 50 units, and I'm not sure that everybody that you have going into those units will have a vehicle or have 2 vehicles that they need to go into the units.
Yeah, Marcy, some of what we've done in the past with some of my other projects, which were up north, is that we got local variances and developed additional green space with the parking element. So it'd be nice if we have that ability to be able to have that down here. And it wasn't very difficult to get, as long as we could show that at some point, should there be an issue with the parking, that we had this space available to develop the additional parking.
Thank you.
It's funny because when this meeting started, I texted Mark because I drive by Spear Village all the time and I never seen a car there, so I didn't know it was open. So he said, well, no one has a car there, so it's ridiculous that we're requiring X amount of spaces per unit and they don't get used. So Mark, anything I could do to help you to not have to build any more parking there, let me know.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for saying that, Commissioner. I thought he was being very nice, and I was wondering why he was being so nice. So thank you for somebody agreeing with what I just said. No, I remember this. We were trying to get a low barrier shelter in downtown Burlington, Vermont, and there was all sorts of parking requirements, which of course could not have been met down in downtown. And we were saying, but they don't have cars, they have bicycles, we do not need parking. And and I think that's where it comes down to, again, for affordable housing projects, you know, you want to make sure that the regulations are also meeting the needs of the project. You know, I don't know, we're going to have to find some use for all that parking space that you have in Spear Village. Will come in. Maybe you should have a flea market there on the weekends.
Just like I mentioned with our HEPA apartments, years ago, our parking lot was always full.
Yeah.
Now it's half full. A lot less are driving them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rent the spaces out to someone for their boats or jet skis.
There you go. I don't know if that's allowed. Probably not. Well, and you know, just as we've said in other things,
Tiny homes,
this
spaces.
What did she say?
Put tiny homes.
There we go. So just a quick aside. I went to school in Boston, in Boston, Simmons College, and right on the corner of Simmons College is the big Sears building, and it has a theater and all sorts of things in it. And my first apartment in there in my sophomore year or junior year, I had an apartment right on Beacon Street, right around the Fenway. And I paid $200 a month for that apartment. And now they're giving parking spaces, they're renting parking spaces in that Sears building for $200 a month. So maybe we can do a rent out spaces.
Sleep in the car. Excellent presentation, Marcy. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So these will be the topics for the next meeting, as well as the follow-up, especially looking to get some more information from Terry or planning and development. So we'll be looking at them. We'll continue on with these next topics. So that's all I have. You can go on.
Yep, so we have future meeting dates, and these are dates that the commission room is available. So I had gone ahead and just penciled these in. If for whatever reason they don't work, and we don't, February 16th, I believe that is the day after President's Day. County offices are not closed on that day, though, like they were yesterday. And then March 30th. If anybody has any conflicts or are those good for everybody, we'll continue to do the virtual as long as we have this in place with everything going on. We will need to set an April meeting date, which will be our public hearing for the AHAC recommendations. Those will be what you vote on to send to the county commission. So any preferences on meeting dates in April, or do we want to wait till next month maybe and set that?
I think, Jeff, that we had all agreed prior that Tuesday morning seems to work well for all of us. So if you want to go ahead and maybe just pick a Tuesday morning in April, and then if there's a conflict, if anybody has a conflict in April on a particular Tuesday, you may want to go ahead and just shoot that over to Jeff prior to him picking that Tuesday in April. We are looking at tentatively the 6th, the 13th, the 20th, or the 27th. And my guess it'll be narrowed down to 2 right off the bat because of commission meeting.
Yeah, that's correct. So the 6th looks like it might work.
Is that not Dade City?
Well, no, the 6th would be a week later. Let me look.
Derek, do you have the commissioner's BCC schedule on your calendar?
I don't see a meeting for either the 6th or 13th. The 20th, there is a BCC meeting.
Here in West Pasco, they may have bypassed it due to spring break or something like that. So as long as the commissioner's available either the 6th or 13th, I think we're all pretty free.
Okay.
We'll look at that.
To everybody. Have plenty of notice.
Perfect.
Fine, either one.
Okay, there we go.
Any comments, questions, concerns? Anybody want to bring anything up before we wrap up?
Okay. All right, then. We'll see everybody on February 16th, either virtually or here in person at the West Pasco Government Center. Thank you, Commissioner, for the nomination.
Thank you.
I hope to serve this community with my partner, Jimmy, and we'll hopefully make a big difference here in Pasco County with affordable housing folks. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Thanks. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.